One of the strangest things in business is this. A company can be growing, bringing in more customers, generating more revenue, and still quietly move toward a cash crisis. That confuses a lot of business owners because most people assume more revenue should automatically create more stability, but very often, the opposite happens. The business grows, the stress increases, cash gets tighter, and the owner starts wondering, how are we doing more business but feeling less financially safe? After decades of working with businesses, I can tell you this is not unusual. In fact, it's one of the most common patterns I see. And the dangerous part is, most CEOs don't recognize the problem until the pressure becomes serious. One of the biggest misunderstandings in business is believing that revenue and cash are the same thing. They are not. Revenue is a number on paper, cash is timing. That distinction matters far more than most owners realize. You can close a large deal today and still not see the actual money for 30, 60, or even 90 days. Meanwhile, payroll is due now. Taxes are due now. Software subscriptions are due now. Vendors want payment now. So what happens? The company appears successful externally, but internally, cash begins tightening. This is why some businesses that look profitable still feel financially unstable. The owner sees growing sales, but experiences shrinking breathing room, and eventually they start managing emotionally instead of strategically. What many people don't understand is that growth itself creates financial pressure. More customers usually means more fulfillment, more staff, more operational complexity, more communication, more overhead, and more moving parts. Every layer of growth consumes cash before it produces stability. That's why scaling too quickly can actually damage a business, because growth amplifies weaknesses. If your receivables are weak, growth magnifies it. If your margins are weak, growth magnifies it. If your operational systems are weak, growth exposes it faster. A lot of businesses don't fail because they stopped growing. They fail because they grew without visibility. That's a very different problem. In most cases, the real issue is not revenue, it's delayed visibility. Most CEOs are managing the business by bank balance. That is extremely dangerous. Because by the time the bank balance tells you there's a problem, the problem already existed weeks earlier. Financial problems usually begin quietly. A slowing receivable here, a shrinking margin there, a payroll increase, an operational inefficiency, a client paying late, a project costing more than expected. Individually, they don't seem catastrophic, but collectively, they begin compressing liquidity, and liquidity is what keeps a business calm, not revenue. Liquidity, the ability to meet obligations comfortably without stress, without panic, without constantly reacting. That's what financially healthy businesses actually protect. This is why I often say, a business can look healthy on paper and still feel unhealthy operationally. Because the owner is experiencing cash pressure in real time. They're worried about timing, payroll, collections, unexpected costs, client delays, tax obligations, and operational fires. Meanwhile, the accountant might still show profit. That disconnect creates enormous psychological pressure on CEOs, especially owner-led businesses, because when cash gets tight, everything becomes emotionally heavier. Decision-making gets worse. Patience decreases, short-term thinking increases, and the owner slowly moves from strategic leadership into financial survival mode. That transition is dangerous because survival mode businesses stop building intelligently. They start reacting emotionally. Financially stable companies think differently about cash. They do not just track sales, they track cash movement. They pay attention to timing, velocity, collection cycles, margin quality, operational efficiency, and liquidity reserves. They understand something important. Revenue creates attention. Cash flow creates survival, and survival creates long-term freedom. The strongest businesses I've seen are usually not the loudest businesses. They are the businesses with predictable systems, clear visibility, healthy liquidity, and operational discipline. That creates calm leadership, and calm leadership usually creates better decisions. I think one of the biggest mistakes in modern business culture is that people chase revenue growth without building financial clarity first. But clarity matters more than excitement. A business owner should know where cash is getting delayed, where margins are leaking, where operational inefficiencies exist, and how long the business can comfortably operate under pressure. That visibility changes everything, because once you truly understand how cash moves through the business, you stop operating emotionally and you start operating intentionally. Most businesses don't collapse suddenly. Usually the warning signs were there long before the crisis appeared. The problem is, the owner didn't see them clearly enough. That's why cash flow is not just an accounting issue, it's an operational visibility issue. And the businesses that understand that early usually make far better decisions long term. Because once a business gains real visibility into how cash actually moves, decision-making changes. The owner becomes less reactive. They stop operating emotionally from week to week. They stop making rushed decisions every time a client pays late or an unexpected expense appears. And instead, they begin operating from a position of clarity. That's a very different way to run a company. Because financially stable businesses are usually not built on excitement. They're built on predictability, predictable collections, predictable margins, predictable operational control, predictable decision-making. And that predictability creates something most owners are actually searching for underneath all the revenue goals. Calm, not panic, not constant pressure, not feeling like the business is surviving month to month despite growth, just clarity. And in my experience, the businesses that survive long-term are usually the ones that learn this lesson before cash pressure forces them to. Because once cash pressure forces the lesson, the options usually become much smaller. Now the owner is reacting instead of planning. They're making decisions under pressure instead of from clarity. And pressure changes the quality of leadership. It shortens thinking, it creates urgency where there should be strategy. And many business owners slowly become trapped in a cycle of constantly solving immediate financial problems instead of building long-term operational stability. That's exhausting, especially for companies that are technically growing, because from the outside, the business may still look successful. Revenue may still be increasing, the team may still be expanding, clients may still be coming in, but internally, the owner feels the instability. They feel the timing pressure, the collection pressure, the payroll pressure, the uncertainty underneath the growth. And over time, that creates something dangerous, financial fatigue. The owner stops thinking strategically because all their attention is consumed by operational pressure. And this is one of the hidden reasons many businesses plateau after growth. Not because the opportunity disappeared, but because the business became too operationally heavy to manage comfortably. The company outgrew its financial visibility, and when that happens, growth no longer feels exciting, it starts feeling stressful. This is why I believe every serious business owner eventually needs to shift their focus away from just increasing revenue and toward building predictable operational control. Because real business strength is not measured by how fast a company grows during good months. It's measured by how stable the company remains when conditions become difficult. That's the real test. Can the business absorb pressure without creating panic? Can it survive slower collections, unexpected costs, temporary market changes, operational mistakes? Or does every disruption immediately create financial stress inside the company? That distinction matters more than most owners realize. Because sustainable businesses are usually built on operational predictability long before they become truly scalable. Because once cash pressure forces the lesson, and once a company develops that level of visibility and control, growth becomes much healthier. Not because the business suddenly becomes perfect, but because leadership finally understands how cash actually behaves inside the operation. And when that happens, the business usually becomes calmer, stronger, and much more resilient over the long term.
And when a business finally develops that level of visibility, leadership changes. Decisions become calmer, more intentional, and far less reactive under pressure. Thanks for watching. If this gave you a better perspective on cash flow and business stability, subscribe for more insights on building stronger, more predictable businesses. See you in the next video.